it's been a busy week. It's been a busy week for you as well, Andrew. You were in Los Angeles working on a hashtag hidden project to TBD that you guys will be getting here very, very soon. That I as a fan of women's basketball, I'm telling you, not as no cap, as a fan, I cannot wait for y'all to read this because I can't wait to read it. But as you were in LA, you got to talk to Lauren Betts. You got to go to UCLA practice. And again, we were recording this on Monday evening where we just saw Lauren Betts have one of the most dominant games, frankly, of the season so far. When you talk about pure dominance, 24 points, 9 rebounds, 9 blocks against Baylor today, almost a triple-double with blocks. And so I posed the question to you and to our chat of like, if she declares, which technically she can declare, are we sure that she's not the number one pick this year if she decided to come out? Because you keep having games like this, and I'm leading up to you talking to your clip here where we'll hear from Lauren Betts herself. But just like, can you kind of set the scene for this clip, and then we'll get into the discussion of Lauren Betts as a player, National Player of the Year, and her draft projection. Set up the clip for us, though.
Yeah, so I was down there writing, or at least gathering quotes for like 4 different features that are going to run over the course of the next month, including one project that you mentioned that I'm particularly excited about. And I went over to UCLA. I talked to Lauren Betts, and one of these pieces that I'm writing is on, the rediscovery of joy after Lauren's transfer from Stanford to UCLA, but also a broader piece on how can we, if it's even possible, reframe the conversation around bigs in an era of social media. Because I feel like in the NBA, a big is somebody that makes most of their highlights based on their verticality. It's the athleticism of jumping crazy high and being super tall. It's Wemby's blocks. It's Joel Embiid's dunks. The only person that is really an exception to that rule is like a Nikola Jokic, right? Where we're looking at the passing, first and foremost. For women's basketball, it's less of a vertical game than the men's game is. And because of that, it's rare that we get bigs dunking and having these crazy feats of athleticism the way the men do. It's why somebody like Ashlyn Watkins, for instance, is such a highlight-friendly player. So I asked Lauren, how do we fix that? For you, as the best player on the best team, how do you fix, if you had to suggest to the media, how do you fix this stuff? Because we have this discussion with shoes, we have this discussion with, motion and aura and endorsements. And there's these talks about a Caitlin Clark versus an Asia Wilson or a Sabrina Ionescu versus an Asia Wilson, right? And, I think there's a belief that some of that has to do, with race. And I subscribe to that to a point. But I also think a big part of that is the fact that one's big and one's a guard. So how do you fix that, and can you? And so that's what I asked her.
Okay, let's hear from Lauren Betts herself on this.
I just think it shows with the teams that they're playing on. I mean, if you look at Asia Wilson and Leah Boston, they did so much for South Carolina. And I mean, Asia Wilson has done so much for the Aces, Leah Boston with Indiana. So I think I think all the work that they do inside, it doesn't go unnoticed. I mean, it's showing on the court, and like their teams are doing well. I think that's, obviously media is trying to capture that as, they're progressing. They're doing a lot better, obviously. But I think for me, going up and seeing both of those players, I grew up admiring them so much, and I am like Aaliyah Boston's, Ada Wilson's biggest fan. So I think just having those role models growing up has just proved to me that the work that I'm doing, I'm just going to continue to do that, and it is going to get me somewhere. And obviously, I think for me, just seeing how this team has done so well, and all the work that I put in, how it's just showing on the court, has just proved to me what I'm doing is the right thing, and I'm just going to continue to do that. And but yeah, I think that media still has a lot of work to do with the posts, but I think that it has gotten a lot better for sure.
Where have they improved, and where can they still improve?
I think when it comes to media, I think just continuing to highlight I think they've done a lot better, especially in the college level, of showing off all of the posts who have continued to dominate throughout their entire college career. I mean, I think they're doing so good at that. I think when it comes to like deals, for example, and like, you know, making sure that they're getting branded the way that they're supposed to, because I think Asia Wilson, she is one of the best basketball players we've seen in the women's game for so long, and I think that she continues to just make the game better, and I think that she deserves all of her success, and I hope she continues to progress because she deserves it.
Okay, well, let's take it from there, Andrew. First off, I guess you got to be there and hear that answer. Your initial thoughts on what she had to say about it, because I mean that all makes sense to me. Like,
I bet Don Staley's a little pissed hearing that.
Man, I was thinking, I was like, that's a
Gamecock.
Gamecock. That's a Gamecock. that was immediately where my head went to. I was like,
damn, good thing the portal didn't open. Shit. No, I think she's right. Where if there is an emphasis to do, there should be an emphasis on the dominance. And 90s basketball did that.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if you are able to adequately capture those types of things now, but I think like a greater emphasis on the blocks, right? Like I do think an attention to bigs that have great footwork, right? I think an opportunity was missed last year with Alyssa Pilley. I think she should have been way bigger for a big that moves the way she does, because that makes people go, "Holy shit!" Right?
Yeah.
Like Lauren is a prolific blocker. She damn near got a triple-double tonight where blocks were one of the categories. Single game record, 9 blocks against Baylor. Clip that shit. Like the blocks, 9 of them is the way to kind of do these things. And, she's a very team-oriented player. So I think the way it works for her is discussing the success. With that in mind, I think you get the deals because you highlight the individual. So, maybe taking a lesson from the past and going back to how we talked about a Patrick Ewing, Hakeem Olajuwon. I know he's a terrible individual, but Karl Malone, because Malone on the basketball side, like Malone was put up with Stockton as like that guy.
Yeah.
And if you got a pair of guards and bigs to make that work, you can do that. I think, I really think they can make that work at UCLA, especially with Betts and Kiki Rice. Yeah. I think they've tried to do that.
Kiki's been playing,
Watkins and Kiki Iriafen. And I don't know. I think she makes a cogent point, and I generally think that she is one of the 3 National Player of the Year candidates. I don't think UCLA is the number 1 player in the country without her. I think she is the force multiplier that no other team has right now, the same way South Carolina had Camila Cardoso last season and nobody else did, right? They have Janiyah Barker, who is kind of shades of Watkins in that way, but they've got the 6'7" big down low that can do all of the things. That I think is what needs to be discussed a little bit more. And in regards to your draft question, and I guess this is kind of like my last take, and I'll just leave it here. Yeah, like is she the most motion oriented, or does she have the highest floor coming out of college? No, but you're not saying no to a 6'7" player that is a national block leader and averages like 19 and 10. Like there's no GM on the planet that is going to see what Lauren Betts does and be like, nah, that can't work in this league. Like, the fitness obviously needs to improve a little bit. Speed can improve a little bit. But, dude, as far as, like, a player, she is a good goddamn player.
Yeah.
And so,
really good.
Like, I don't know. I think she'd be first this year. I think she'll be first next year, even in a Juju Watkins draft. My understanding is, without like any full-on reporting, but an educated understanding, she wants to play with her sister. Her sister, Sienna Betts, is the number 1 player in the country. She's here in Colorado. She goes to high school at Grandview. She's committed to play at UCLA. I asked Lauren about that, and she talked with certainty about playing with Sienna next year. And when you hear that, it's like, this is not the talk of someone who thinks this is like an up in the air discussion. Is someone who's making a personal choice to stay to be able to do this. And so I don't think she's going anywhere this year, but if she was, I still think she's number 1 player in the country.
No, I'm with you on that. I one thing that's interesting to me, kind of honing in on the National Player of the Year discussion. I don't get why it feels like we have to almost force Betts' name into this. I think it honestly comes back to the guards versus the bigs. I truly think that's what this is, because I saw a graphic. I forget where it was, but it was Hannah, it was Juju, it was Paige, and it was like, okay, here's where they stand, and Lauren Betts is on that graphic, and there's no world where Lauren Betts should not at least be on that graphic, if not over, to me, Paige right now. There's no world, and I think, frankly, especially as you get milestone performances like this, because ultimately, these runs are about, you have your stats, you have your standings, and you have your story. That's always what I come back to when it comes to awards, and especially when you are competing in this way. The standings for, I think it might come down to Battle of LA games, and how she performs in those, obviously on the kind of the biggest stage against a fellow National Player of the Year contender in Juju Watkins in that way. So it might just come down to those games, frankly. But from my standings perspective, right now, Notre Dame, USC, and UCLA are all in the same stratosphere of it. Obviously, UCLA is number one, which is a big difference, but in the same area. The stats that Lauren Betts is putting up, to your point, it's ridiculous. She is consistently dominant, consistently, and is only getting better as well. I remember when I was out there for the South Carolina UCLA game, I remember I even asked Corey Close about it in the post game. I'm like, they forced Lauren Betts to play make, essentially, and it didn't end up in a ton of assists or anything. The stats wouldn't show. But if you're watching that game, the gravity that Lauren Betts has for this UCLA team, even with all the star power that they have surrounding her, because this roster's stacked, it is very clear who number one on the scouting report is, and reasonably so, with Lauren Betts. And there's just no world where she is not only in the conversation, but has a very strong argument to be leading this conversation for National Player of the Year. So I think it all does come back to, is what Lauren Betts is doing as flashy as what Juju is doing? No. As flashy as what Hannah is doing? No. As flashy even as Paige? No. But you got 9 blocks in a game? That it ain't flashy, but that is a milestone game when it comes to your kind of the storyline of having these moments. Everyone remembers Juju's game against Stanford last year. Everyone remembers that, right? Everyone is gonna this Hannah, the Hannah USC game. I feel like that is a game that is going to stick in people's memory. Same with the UConn game. It's not against that top opponent, and Baylor was a top 20, barely stuck in the 25 going into this game. But nine blocks is one of those games to me that I'm not going to forget watching that. And so I don't know. I don't think the general public is thinking in that way right now. And I do think ultimately, as I said, it keeps funneling back into guard versus big. But man, Lauren Betts is a strong case for the best player in the country right now. And it's not hard to make by any means. There we go. Mic drop it. Mic drop it. Thank y'all for tapping in here to Ball Up Top. A long episode for you, but again, a lot of stuff going on. College, Unrivaled, WNBA free agency. There's a lot happening. But that's what we're here for, is to break it all down for you. Go check out. We had boots on the ground at the Coretta Scott King Classic, so you'll be able to go check that out. Producer Shardy had boots on the ground, so we got press conferences on the YouTube uploaded already. We've got his article from earlier in the week. So if you're looking kind of some thoughts on Lauren Betts' performance in that game, it's a place for you there. But go check out all of our coverage here on the YouTube. Make sure you're subscribed on the podcast. If you're listening on podcast platform, rate 5 stars, all that. Subscribe so you don't miss it here. And of course, NoCatSpace.wbb.com, the hub for all of the No Cat Space coverage. A big month ahead for No Cat Space. So make sure you're tapped in over on the website, especially because we got some fun stuff cooking up. So thank y'all for tapping into the long episode of Ball Up Top, a little extended version, and we'll see y'all next time.